So, astronauts always have a lot of work to do. They deal with breakdowns on the ship, go into outer space to repair something, conduct experiments, keep daily records, report about everything to the center of the Earth, and sometimes meet unknown mysterious things from outer space. Let's see which ones. So, you're alone in a small spaceship. You have our big planet on one side and the boundless black space on the other. You're checking instruments, doing some astronaut things, when you hear a strange knock. Someone or something is knocking on your ship. You realize that this is impossible, but then the knocking repeats. You look out of the porthole window, but don't see anyone. Then you report the incident to the dispatcher on the ground. No one knows what it could be. You've been training your stress tolerance and psyche for many years, but now you're a little nervous. Astronaut Yang Liwei first heard a mysterious knocking sound in 2003 when he was inside a small spacecraft as part of the first Chinese space mission. Yang said the sound was like hitting an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. He also noticed that the knock came neither from the outside of the ship nor from the inside. He couldn't determine its source. When Yang returned to Earth, he tried to reproduce the knock so that experts could discover its nature. But no one managed to find out what it was. A similar story repeated itself with other Chinese astronauts in 2005 and 2008. Yang's colleagues suggested that the ship could make the sound due to the hull's expansion or compression. The temperature inside the ship was very different from the temperature in outer space, and this could cause the metal hull to make a sound similar to a knock. Hey, don't knock it. Another mysterious sound was heard by NASA astronauts on Apollo 10 while orbiting the Moon. It was a strange whistle of unknown origin. One of the astronauts described it as cosmic music. The information about this incident was classified for a long time, but recently NASA has explained the mystery. The whistling sound was just some radio interference. But it doesn't mean there are no creepy sounds in space. NASA has launched many research probes into the boundless depths of space. One probe recorded the sounds of Jupiter, another the sounds of Saturn. The third probe recorded dust particles and small rocks crashing into the ship. Technically, these are not sounds because sound waves cannot exist in space. The ships recorded radio emissions from various objects, and then scientists transformed these waves into sounds. And the coolest thing is that you can find all this on the internet. There were many rumors and legends about Neil Armstrong and his landing on the Moon. One of the most popular myths tells how the astronaut saw strange spaceships on the Moon. The astronaut never commented on this case, and his testimony and the data he gave to the communication center on Earth was classified. But, according to the legend, Armstrong said creepy words when he was on the Earth satellite and saw something. "These babies were huge, sir. Enormous. You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the Moon watching us." After that, he returned to the spaceship and flew to Earth. Yep, that smells like an urban legend for sure. In 2005, the commander of the International Space Station, Leroy Chiao, saw strange lights during a spacewalk. He described them as a set of white lights that rose from Earth and passed through him. His colleagues reported that it could have been an optical illusion caused by many fishing boats with searchlights along the coast of South America. Leroy saw the lights from the boats refracting and passing through his helmet. He doubted this version because he was at an altitude of 230 miles and the boats had to have some pretty powerful lights. But the astronaut was also skeptical about the extraterrestrial origin of these lights. One of the most common mysterious phenomena associated with space is glowing lights, but sometimes people notice something more material. For example, NASA astronaut Story Musgrave saw a tube that was flying in space, moving like a snake. He suggested it was a living creature from another planet or something like that. Of course, no one believed him. People assumed that the astronaut had seen some detached part from the ISS or a piece of space debris, like a hose or a tube. But the astronaut was sure that this tube had been moving like a living organism. However, the version with flying garbage sounds much more legit. During the Apollo 11 mission, astronauts reported strange light flashes in their eyes. The members of the Apollo 12 and 13 teams saw the same thing. The strangest thing was that they saw these flashes even with their eyes closed. After that, many astronauts reported seeing bright lights. They saw flashes before going to bed and in dark rooms. Some of them were bright, and some were dim and had different colors. During spacewalks, they repeated every few minutes. Scientists conducted experiments on Earth to figure out the nature of this strange phenomenon. As a result, NASA concluded that the astronauts had seen cosmic rays of an unknown nature. Researchers suggested that the particles of these rays directly affected the receptors of the retina. The astronauts' optic nerves felt the radiation, and their brains reacted to it with light flashes. During the Gemini 4 space mission, astronaut James McDivitt saw a strange geometric object in space, similar to a tin can with a pencil sticking out of it. As soon as the media found out about it, newspapers started claiming that James had seen a ship of another civilization. Then, a few years later, the astronaut refuted this theory. He saw some photos taken inside the ship and noticed the same tin can on it. It turned out that this was the reflection of some bolts in the window pane. By the way, this was one of the many times astronauts confused the details of the ship with some weird space stuff. In 1962, astronaut John Glenn was inside the Friendship 7 spacecraft when he noticed some strange things outside. They looked like tiny glowing fireflies. Glenn immediately reported this to NASA's command post. The dispatchers didn't know how to comment on this message, so the nature of the cosmic fireflies remains unsolved. But then, almost a year later, astronomers found out what it had been. At first, they thought the fireflies were pieces of metal torn off some part of the ship. But then they realized the glowing lights were droplets of frozen liquid that shifted and cracked in outer space. One of the strangest cases in the history of early space travel occurred during the mission of the Gemini 6 spacecraft on December 16, 1965. There were two astronauts, Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford, on board. They were preparing to return to Earth, but saw something strange in outer space. Wally contacted the Mission Control Center and reported he was observing an unknown object similar to a satellite. It was moving from north to south, somewhere in the polar orbit of the planet. The object was approaching them, and the astronauts could see the details. It was an unknown spaceship with a pilot dressed in a red suit. Wally heard through the radio that voices in the command center became tense. No one knew what it was and how to react to the unknown ship. Then, at that moment, they began to hear what sounded like music. Somehow, the song Jingle Bells started playing on the radio. Wally Schirra performed it on the harmonica, and the command center realized this was all a hoax. Schirra and Stafford cooked up this Christmas gag a few weeks before the flight. They wanted to cheer up their colleagues on Earth by saying they had seen Santa Claus in a spaceship. When Schirra finished the song, the guys from Earth relaxed and said it was too much. It's still one of the most famous jokes astronauts have ever played. Psst, a giant is hiding in the sky. Kipu is the biggest thing we've ever found in the nearby universe. It's been messing with our understanding of the universe for years, and we've just discovered it. Kipu is dense, powerful, and dangerous to ignore. If we don't understand structures like this, we might be reading the universe completely wrong. So, what exactly is it? It's not a solid object like a planet or a star, and it's not a single thing. It's a superstructure, basically an entire region of the universe, a tangled mess of matter spanning a huge amount of space stitched together by gravity. Kipu is made up of an enormous web of galaxies, galaxy clusters or giant groups of galaxies, gas and dark matter. It's like a superhighway, with galaxy clusters being the cities, filaments being the roads, and dark matter being the invisible infrastructure holding it all together. This giant stretches across 1.3 billion light-years. That means if you traveled at the speed of light, it would still take you 1,003,000,000 years just to cross it. Kipu also holds 200 quadrillion solar masses, even though it only takes up 13% of the observable universe. The name Kipu comes from the Incan system of knotted cords used to record things, called quipus. It was like a writing system. In that system, each knot, color, and twist told a story – numbers, taxes, harvests, and so on. So, when astronomers saw this colossal structure in space, long, tangled, and branching like space cords, they named it after this language of knots. Plus, the shape of the space reminded scientists of those threads. There's a long central filament, and the smaller ones are branching off the sides. What's even more fascinating, Kipu isn't alone. When scientists mapped this part of the universe, they found 5 of these massive structures. They aren't just sitting there either. They formed over billions of years through gravity slowly pulling matter together. All told, all those giants hold nearly half of all the galaxy clusters in that region, 30% of all the galaxies, and a quarter of all the matter in the observable universe. The team that found Kipu used a clever trick. They searched for X-rays coming from galaxy clusters. These clusters aren't just full of galaxies, they're also filled with superhot gas. That gas is so hot it glows in X-ray light, which we can't see with our eyes, but special telescopes can. If there's a lot of that X-ray glow, it means there's a huge amount of matter, galaxies, gas, and dark matter all pulled together by gravity. That's where the densest, most crowded areas of the universe are. So, by following the X-ray glow, the scientists could draw a map showing where the biggest cosmic structures like Kipu were hiding. Why does any of this matter? Because these megastructures mess with everything. First of all, they warp the cosmic microwave background, the ancient light left over from the Big Bang. It's a faint glow of light that fills the entire universe. After the Big Bang happened and our world was created, it emitted its very first light and signals that still haven't completely weakened yet. The leftover radiation is still coming to us, even after 13.8 billion years. By studying this ancient light, scientists can learn what the early universe looked like, and Kipu ruins it for us. These megastructures hold so much gravity that they bend and distort this ancient light as it passes through them. That's called the integrated Sachs-Wolf effect. These warps add noise to the original signal, and now it's harder for us to get a proper, clearer understanding of what the baby universe looked like and how it expanded. They also mess with the Hubble constant. The universe is constantly expanding, and the Hubble constant tells us how fast it's growing. In other words, how quickly galaxies are moving apart from each other. But giant things in space, like Kipu, have so much gravity that they pull nearby galaxies toward them, messing up the way those galaxies move. This makes it harder for scientists to measure the universe's true speed of expansion. They can't tell if a galaxy is moving because of the universe growing or just because it's being pulled by something huge nearby. And finally, there's gravitational lensing. Light in space travels constantly, but it doesn't always follow a straight line. If the space gets distorted, like by gravity, then the light traveling through the space will get bent and distorted too. Gravitational lensing is when light from faraway galaxies gets bent because it passes by something supermassive, like Kipu here. That huge gravity pulls on the light, like how a heavy ball can bend a sheet. And since light delivers information to us, literally makes us see what things look like, this bending distorts how we see galaxies. The images of galaxies end up looking stretched, brighter, or we can even find an entire galaxy in the wrong place. It's like looking at our universe through a warped magnifying glass. If we're not careful, we could misread those distortions and get the wrong idea about what our world looks like. Luckily, we didn't just drop these mysterious superstructures out of nowhere. Astronomers suspected that something like that should be out there. They just didn't know for sure. Our best model for the universe is called Lambda CDM. It says, universe started with the Big Bang, is still expanding, and is mostly made of mysterious stuff, dark energy, and cold dark matter, the CDM part. We can't see or touch these things, but we know they exist, because if they didn't, our universe would literally break apart. This model matches what we do see, like galaxies forming, how stars move, and the overall shape of the universe. So even if some puzzle pieces by themselves are still a mystery, they match the actual picture. And this model actually predicted things like Qipu. When scientists ran simulations using that model, they saw similar structures forming, giant cosmic webs of galaxies tied together by gravity. Qipu matched those predictions in real life. This also means that Lambda CDM is matching real life once again, thank heavens. No huge surprises here. But now that we actually found it, it's the largest known structure in the observable universe. There was another giant before Qipu, the Sloan Great Wall. That one was discovered in 2003 and was believed to be one of the largest structures ever found. And it's still an absolute monster. The Sloan Great Wall stretches over 1 billion light-years across. It's called a wall, but it's not like a wall you'd find on Earth. It's also a vast cosmic web, made up of thousands of galaxies and gas connected by dark matter. What makes both Qipu and the Sloan Great Wall so surprising is that they literally seem too big to exist. According to the Lambda CDM model, structures that huge shouldn't be common, especially at the time they formed. How did these giants form so fast in a universe that's supposed to be growing, expanding, and smoothing over time? And if we keep finding more of them, that would be completely insane. It could mean there's something deeper going on in the way our world is built. It's all part of our crazy Copernican journey, a long series of discoveries where we just keep getting humbled by the universe. Every time we find something like this, we realize even more how we're not the center of everything. First, we learned the Earth wasn't the center of the solar system. Then we found that the solar system is just one speck in a galaxy. Now, even galaxy superclusters, which we believe to be the biggest, are being dwarfed by structures like Qipu and the Sloan Great Wall. But also, these structures won't last forever. Qipu is temporary. Over billions of years, gravity will tear it apart, breaking it into smaller pieces. Some parts will collapse into tighter clusters, others will drift apart. Right now, though, it's one of the most important structures in the known universe. It shapes how galaxies form. It bends light, making it super important for us to decipher. It literally messes with our understanding of the cosmos.
This terrifying but very much real image emerged just recently. In it, you can see something that looks like it belongs in a science fiction movie. From far above Earth, aboard the International Space Station, an astronaut captured something astonishing over Louisiana. A gigantic jet blasting upward straight into the sky. It looks as if Earth is sending a signal skyward. Can science explain this eerie phenomenon? Apparently, it can. This energy blast is called a gigantic jet, and it's one of the rarest and most powerful kinds of lightning we know about. Unlike regular lightning, which strikes down toward the ground, gigantic jets shoot up from storm clouds, and they can stretch for more than 50 miles into the sky. Sometimes they even reach the ionosphere, the layer where Earth's atmosphere starts blending into outer space. To give you an idea, space officially starts around 62 miles above sea level, and the ionosphere stretches from about 50 to 400 miles up. Shockingly, scientists have only known about gigantic jets for about 20 years, and we're still figuring out exactly how they work. One theory is that something inside the storm cloud blocks the lightning from escaping downward. So all this pent-up energy looks for another way out and ends up blasting upward into the sky. But honestly, we still don't fully understand why it happens. Gigantic jets are also extremely rare. Scientists think that they happen only around 1,000 times a year on the entire planet. And when they do happen, they carry a lot of energy. We're talking more than 50 times the power of a normal lightning bolt. The strongest gigantic jet ever recorded happened in Oklahoma in May 2018. It was intense, reaching a temperature of 8,000 degrees Fahrenheit and releasing about 60 times more energy than regular lightning. In other words, it was a huge burst of electricity flying straight into the sky. Most of the photos we have of gigantic jets come from satellites or astronauts on the International Space Station. But a few have also been captured from airplanes flying over storms. The latest jaw-dropping image was taken on November 19, 2024, by an astronaut aboard the ISS. At first, the picture wasn't released by NASA or any space agency, but one photographer, known for tracking and photographing rare lightning events, found the photo by accident. He was browsing through a NASA-run website called the Gateway to Astronaut Photography of Earth, which hosts photos taken by astronauts. There, he spotted images showing a giant lightning jet. Eventually, the photos were brought to public attention on February 26, 2025, and they've also been turned into a time-lapse video on YouTube. We still don't know exactly about the exact spot where the jet happened. Thick storm clouds covered the ground in the pictures. But based on where the ISS was flying at the time, the jet probably happened just off the coast of New Orleans. Speaking of other images of the gigantic jets, a photographer living in Puerto Rico was taking pictures of a storm moving through the area. That same storm would later grow into Hurricane Franklin. While watching the skies, he saw something truly amazing. Several massive lightning bolts shooting straight up out of the storm clouds, stopping just below the edge of space. No wonder. According to a 2022 study, gigantic jets happen most often in tropical areas, and they're more likely during fast-growing storms, like Hurricane Franklin. Gigantic jets often end with thin, red, branch-like lightning tendrils. These faint red flashes are very similar to another rare type of lightning called sprites. Those sometimes look like giant glowing jellyfish in the sky. In 2023, an astronomer named Stanislav Kaniansky in Slovakia captured one of the clearest images of a sprite ever. It happened during a thunderstorm over Central Europe on August 14th, and he spotted it near his home. In the photo, you can see a huge glowing red structure with zigzag patterns stretching over 31 miles across the sky. But like all sprites, it only lasted a fraction of a second before fading away. Sprites happen when lightning sends electrical energy upward into the upper part of Earth's atmosphere, instead of just downward like regular lightning. This energy creates glowing strands of plasma, which is basically electrified gas, way up in the ionosphere. Since sprites are so fast and often hidden by thick clouds, they're very hard to photograph. But Kaniansky got lucky. The thunderstorm was about 200 miles away from him, so he had a clear view just above the tops of the storm clouds. That perfect angle helped him capture this stunning phenomenon. There are many different kinds of lightning, and some of them are not only rare but also super dangerous. Let's take ball lightning, for example. It's exactly what it sounds like, a glowing, floating ball of light that appears during thunderstorms. It's also one of the weirdest and most mysterious forms of lightning. People have seen these strange light balls, usually about the size of a grapefruit, slowly spinning or hovering just above the ground. Some even say they've seen them float through closed windows or suddenly appear indoors, then vanish after about 10 seconds. For hundreds of years, no one really knew what caused ball lightning. Scientists had no explanation, and most sightings were based on eyewitness stories. Then, in 2012, someone finally managed to capture ball lightning on camera. Since then, different ideas have come up to explain what ball lightning really is. One of the newest theories suggests that the ball is actually a tight bubble of super compressed air. This compressed air bends and spins white light in all directions, making it look like a glowing ball rolling around in the sky. And according to the researchers, ball lightning can be almost 1 billion times more intense than regular lightning that moves in a straight line. Then there are elves. They look a lot like sprites, but instead of looking like jellyfish or dancing shapes, elves appear as huge glowing rings or halos in the sky. And they're massive. An elf can spread out to be up to 185 miles wide. You can even spot them from space or through thin clouds during the day. Dark lightning is probably one of the strangest types of lightning. and most people don't even know it exists. Unlike regular lightning, it doesn't produce a bright flash. Instead, it gives off intense bursts of radiation, especially gamma rays, the most energetic form of light found in nature. Dark lightning happens when high-speed electrons slam into air molecules inside a storm cloud. This creates a burst of gamma rays. They're so strong that they can mess with satellites hundreds of miles away in space. In rare cases, when a plane flies through a thunderstorm, these flashes can hit the aircraft. Some passengers could get a quick dose of radiation, about the same as a full-body CT scan. But worry not. Scientists say these occasions are extremely rare and not a reason to be afraid of flying. And finally, there's positive lightning. You see, lightning is still kind of a mystery, even for scientists. But here's the basic idea. Inside a storm cloud, tiny pieces of ice bump into each other and build up electric charges. Some become positive, others negative. Most of the lightning we see comes from the bottom of the cloud, where there are lots of negative charges. These reach down and zap the ground. But sometimes, lightning comes from the top of the cloud, where positive charges hang out. That's called positive lightning, and it only makes up about 5 to 10% of lightning strikes. Most of the time, those positive charges just zap other parts of the cloud. But sometimes, they shoot all the way down to the ground. That's why positive lightning can strike even when the sky looks clear, because it comes from way up high in the cloud, sometimes miles away from the storm itself. The scariest part is that regular lightning can reach about 300 million volts, while the charge of positive lightning can be up to 1 billion volts. That means positive lightning is much stronger and more dangerous.
Hey Mythbusters! Today we're debunking some classic space myths. Hop on the next space shuttle and let's get to the bottom of these tales once and for all. Picture this. You're floating weightlessly in space, sipping on a cup of delicious hot chocolate, when a peculiar thought pops into your head. Can you scream in outer space? And if yes, would anyone hear that scream?
If you've watched the movie Alien, then you know the answer to this one. You can't hear sounds in outer space.
It's not that sounds don't exist.
It's just that you can't hear them.
There's no one better to clarify this myth than Chris Hadfield. He's been on a couple of spacewalks during his life as an astronaut. And once you're out there in the darkness of space, you can't hear anything.
All you hear is silence. Complete silence.
But hey, just around the corner is a massive ball of explosion, aka the sun. We just can't hear the explosions happening because there's no medium for sound to travel through. It would be quite uncomfortable for an astronaut, though, if they could hear all the noises going on in outer space. Now, imagine you're zipping through space, feeling like a futuristic superhero, when a shooting star passes by your side. But wait, is it really a star? Unfortunately, shooting stars are not stars at all. They are small space rocks known as meteoroids, entering Earth's atmosphere and creating a stunning light show. Oh, and since we're debunking myths, let's head straight for another one. You've probably heard that meteors only crash into Earth on extremely rare occasions, like once every dinosaur extinguishing apocalypse. That's not true. Scientists estimate that about 48 tons of meteoritic material fall on Earth each day. But almost all of this material is vaporized in Earth's atmosphere. The bright trail we see in the night sky is what we popularly call a shooting star. Next time you make a wish upon a shooting star, remember, you're actually hoping on a tiny piece of space debris. It's not so romantic after all. Can we or can we not fly into the stratosphere on air balloons? Apparently, we can. The Earth's stratosphere starts relatively close to the ground, about 7 or 8 miles up from the Earth's surface, but it continues a long way up. If you were to fly yourself all the way into the stratosphere with some type of air balloon, just make sure you have really good equipment at hand. You'll need a special suit and some breathing devices, because air starts to get pretty thin the higher you get. Of course, if you do go all the way up, you need to get a picture of the Earth's curvature. So take a chest harness with you where you can put a special camera or something like that. And how about you live stream the whole thing? That would be a first! Imagine it's been 102 days since you left Earth. You've adapted well to life in outer space, but something weird is happening to your body. You're getting taller. How is that even possible? Don't stress about it, it's completely normal. The truth of the matter is, you're not getting taller. This is what happens to your body when it's not under the effect of gravity. Our body has natural space between vertebrae and joints. On Earth, this space is almost completely squeezed due to the force of gravity. But in space, your body gets some time off of the pushing force of gravity and begins to stretch more and more. So yes, astronauts can grow up to 3% taller when they're on long missions. And here's a curiosity, NASA has that all covered when they're tailor-making spacesuits, of course. This way, astronauts will always have extra space in their suits. Once astronauts are back on Earth, the anti-gravity effect will wear off. So maybe they'll spend a few days wearing capri pants before it fits perfectly on their bodies again. Never have I ever pictured an airplane door bursting open mid-flight and a bunch of passengers being sucked into the atmosphere like flying feathers. Well, I'm betting most of you have had similar thoughts when getting inside a plane. Now imagine if this were to happen in outer space. Common knowledge says that if an astronaut is sucked out of an airlock, this person would be burnt to a crisp. Brace yourselves, because this is not only true, but the reality of it is way worse. According to astronaut Chris Hadfield, this is what would happen. The part of your body in the shade of the sun would experience temperatures of negative 418 degrees Fahrenheit, while the part of you getting sunlight would burn at around 480 degrees Fahrenheit. Your lungs would collapse, and your blood would start to boil like tea water. So you would burn, freeze, lose your ability to breathe, and boil. Yikes! How many times have you heard that astronauts have to work out every second of every day, otherwise they'll pass out? This is a complete myth. Remember we talked about gravity earlier? Due to the lack of gravity in outer space, our bodies don't have to do any heavy work. Our torsos don't have to sustain the weight of our heads. And we don't have to make any effort to move our legs because, essentially, there's no walking in outer space. Now imagine living like that for 6 months, or even a year of your life. Your muscles could turn into jello. That's why astronauts work out. They'll strap themselves and run on a treadmill, or they'll do some weightlifting in a special machine. This way, their muscles won't feel the lack of gravity too much. They do need to keep hydrated though. You know what? If I was an astronaut, I'd ask NASA if I could take my super soft water flask up into space with me. You've probably heard that space smells like burnt steak or barbecue sauce. Now, as much as this sounds absurd, this myth is more true than it is false. Astronauts obviously can't smell space when they're in it because they can't take off their helmets. They usually smell it once a space vehicle docks and they open up a hatch. Apparently, what causes this smell is the presence of hydrocarbons that float around in space. Who would have thought, huh? Hey smart people, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that if astronauts fly at the speed of light, they won't age a single second? I knew you'd say no. Let's get a few things straight. First of all, we haven't figured out how to operate vehicles at the speed of light. This would require an immense amount of energy, and we don't have the technology to do that. Second, even if we managed to send a human inside a spacecraft that traveled at the speed of light, this person would still age. They would age differently than the people who remained on Earth, that's a fact, but they would still age. Do you lot really think there's such a thing as immortality? Nah. If you've seen the first Avatar, then you certainly remember that humans only managed to get to Pandora because they traveled in cryosleep. In other words, they froze their bodies, put them in a cryobed, and traveled for years without aging. Yes, this sounds amazing, but we still don't have the technology to do that. Our bodies are mainly made out of water, right? And when you freeze water, it expands. That's why you should never leave soda cans unattended in your freezer. Right now, if we froze a person's body, the water inside of it would expand, harming tissues and organs. So no, we can't cryosleep our way into interstellar travel. Not yet, at least. Here's a crazy thought. What would happen if an astronaut took a drone with him on one of their spacewalks? Unless it's a NASA-designed drone, maybe the thing would freeze and burn like humans would if they went into space without a suit. But hey, a person can dream, can't they?
Now, as a child, weren't you taught not to play with your food? Well, apparently these astronauts weren't. Floating Jell-O cubes across the cabin while in zero-G is a lot of fun, but it is also a sign of a potential problem called space euphoria. No one ever considered that extreme happiness in space could become a severe problem, but it can become a serious problem, and that's no kidding. For many years, space euphoria went undetected, although it was right there, front and center for all to see. When Apollo 14 astronaut Alan Shepard smuggled golf balls onto the moon and tried to create a tiny moon for the moon by attempting to hit a golf ball into orbit around the moon, everyone thought it was funny. Apollo 16 astronaut Charles Duke thought it would be funny if he tried to compete with the 1972 Olympic athletes back on Earth. He attempted to outjump the Olympic athletes to benefit from the 1/6 gravity on the moon. Duke jumped so high that he rotated onto his back and fell crashing onto the life support system in his backpack. It could have been a fatal fall if the bag had cracked. Duke's commander, John Young, said, "That's not funny," and it sure wasn't. Yet, when Apollo 17 astronauts began dancing and singing children's nursery songs while collecting rock samples, everyone still thought it was cute. Space euphoria again went unnoticed. As early as 1965, when Ed White became the first American to walk in space on a tethered spacewalk, his space euphoria became evident. He stayed out much longer than was necessary to test his mobility with the very first jetpack, or MMU as it was called, officially the Manned Maneuvering Unit. In his own words, "I'm not coming back. This is fun." Finally, when ordered to return to his Gemini spacecraft, Ed White said it was the saddest day of my life. Obviously, something sinister is at work with space euphoria. Weightlessness, combined with the view of Earth passing below, creates an exhilaration that overcomes all sense of duty. It is the great danger of space euphoria. Now, in hindsight, the effects of space euphoria could be seen when Apollo 17 astronauts drove the lunar rover on the moon. They exceeded the recommended speed limit and could be heard whooping and yelling as the rover rocked onto two wheels, even becoming airborne at times. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield was busy at work during his tethered EVA, extravehicular activity, when he paused to look over his shoulder. The glory of space smacked him in the face. He was so emotionally overwhelmed at the magnificent beauty of the Milky Way galaxy that tears began to fill up Hadfield's eyes. Now in space, tears do not flow down your cheeks. They pool up in your eyes. Hadfield had become blinded by tears of joy. But Hadfield, against protocol, refused to tell his supervisors on Earth. Only after he was no longer able to work did Hadfield speak a famous quote, "Houston, I have a problem." It was a direct result of space euphoria. Astronaut Hadfield managed to get back into the space shuttle, but his EVA was not fulfilled. Space euphoria had interfered. There is another aspect of space euphoria that deserves serious attention. It is something called the overview effect. Weightlessness in space affects everything from the physical and psychological health of the astronauts to the physics of using all the mechanical equipment of the spacecraft. However, weightlessness in space is not due to a lack of gravity. Astronauts orbit Earth less than 300 miles up, called LEO, low Earth orbit. There's plenty of gravity in low Earth orbit. The Earth's gravity keeps the Moon in orbit, and the Moon is about 250,000 miles away. In fact, a 150-pound astronaut would weigh 142 pounds in LEO. Weightlessness in space is due to free fall, not lack of gravity. What goes up must come down. The rocket blasts off, and about 8 minutes later, the engines shut off. The spacecraft begins to fall back to Earth. Fortunately, by this time, the rocket has achieved orbital velocity, which is about 17,500 miles per hour, so that it falls towards Earth but never hits the Earth. It keeps falling and falling around and around, precisely in the same curved path as the surface of the Earth. It's in orbit. It is free fall. Even though everyone calls it zero-G, it's not. If you were to place a bathroom scale under your feet when in free fall, it would show 0. You would weigh nothing. That's because the bathroom scale is falling too. The exciting thing is that astronauts retain all their muscle power. Their mass stays the same. Therefore, they can lift heavy equipment in space that would weigh hundreds or even thousands of pounds on Earth. Astronauts become superhumans in space, and that creates another unusual situation. There are lots of unusual situations in space. On the very first trip to the Moon, the Apollo 8 astronauts were not even scheduled to look back and photograph the Earth. Apollo 8 astronauts took only a limited number of pictures of Earth. That's unusual and kind of weird. But Earthrise from the Moon became perhaps the most influential environmentalist picture of the 20th century, and it wasn't even planned. But this is the key to understanding the overview effect: surprise at the unexpected. Even today, almost all globes of Earth are not of Earth. Globes in schools and libraries show each country, usually in different colors. Each country, sure enough, contains a star, but it is to mark the capital city of that country. It is not how the Earth looks from space. These globes are not globes of the planet Earth. In fact, it isn't easy to even find a globe of the planet Earth. Read the labels on these classroom globes. The geopolitical world. These are globes of a place called the world. There is no planet called the world. The world does not live in space. It lives on someone's desk or shelf. The definition of space is geological in origin. Space is defined as existing up to, but not including, the atmosphere of Earth. Earth isn't even an astronomical object. It explains why the very first mission to the Moon, the Apollo 8 mission, had not scheduled any pictures of Earth. Selfies weren't invented then. It also explains why the psychological impact of seeing Earthrise from the Moon was so profound. It was a unique and totally new perception for which any and all humans were utterly unprepared. Seeing Earth in space was a complete surprise. Imagine yourself floating in space outside the spacecraft. You are surrounded by the Milky Way galaxy blazing with millions of stars. The planet Earth is a blue marble passing beneath your feet. Pretty heady stuff. How would you react? Would it change you? Apollo 9 astronaut Rusty Schweickart felt strongly that he was what he called the sensing element for humanity. What does he mean? It's the overview effect kicking in. Schweickart felt that he was connected to all the people on Earth. He compared it to being born into a new existence. And astronaut Schweickart is not the only one who felt the overview effect. Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell had this to say about being in space. It was rather an extension of the same universal process that evolved our molecules, and what I felt was an extraordinary personal connectedness with it. I experienced what has been described as an ecstasy of unity. I not only saw the connectedness, I felt it and experienced it sentientally. I was overwhelmed with the sensation of physically and mentally extending out into the cosmos. Some years after returning from space, astronaut Mitchell started an institute to study the brainwaves of people who had been in space. And yes, they are different. According to Mitchell's institute's research, the euphoric sensation of oneness with the universe creates brainwaves similar to meditating monks. Mitchell's studies were so significant that NASA launched a special Space Shuttle mission in 1998 just to study the effects of space on the brain. The Neurolab mission studied brain cells of laboratory animals, and the astronaut crew too, as brain cells tried to adapt to the freefall environment in low Earth orbit. Well, we can't all be astronauts, but now we can all access virtual reality experiences of what the astronauts saw in space. The internet has opened up our earthbound point of view to share the unity and oneness of the overview effect, and give us a small taste of the space euphoria astronauts get in space.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
2 astronauts are stuck in space right now. It all started when they heard this creepy, pulsing sound coming from inside their spacecraft. A noise that shouldn't even be possible in the vacuum of space. The situation got so strange that their return trip from the International Space Station was cancelled.
What was supposed to be just a few days in space has turned into 9 months of a real nightmare. This situation is happening to NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and his colleague Sunita Williams. On June 5, 2024, they left Earth with one mission: to spend about 24 hours traveling aboard the Boeing Starliner spacecraft until they reached the space station. They were supposed to stay there for only 8 days, working alongside the 7 astronauts and cosmonauts already aboard. After that, they'd head back to Earth on the Starliner. Simple as that. However, just as they were getting ready to return to Earth, something strange happened. Wilmore started hearing this bizarre noise inside the Starliner capsule. It sounded like a heartbeat, with steady intervals. The creepiest part is that space is supposed to be totally silent, since there's no medium for sound to travel through. There are no atoms or molecules to carry a sound wave, so there's no sound or echo. And no one can hear you scream. It is just total silence. So there's no way those weird sounds could be coming from outside the spaceship. The situation got pretty concerning, as the noise just wouldn't stop. On top of that, the astronauts couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I mean, they knew it was coming from a speaker inside the capsule, but they had no clue what was causing it. So, they decided to ask the experts at the Johnson Space Center in Houston for help. Before we continue, it's important to know that odd sounds in spaceships aren't uncommon. Back in 1969, when the Apollo Mission 10 entered lunar orbit, astronauts said they heard a mysterious music coming from the far side of the moon. It was like a whistling sound that lasted almost an hour. It was so bizarre that they thought no one would believe them. Specialists think the sound was caused by radio interference, maybe from a magnetic field or atmosphere. But here's the thing. The moon has no magnetic field and not enough atmosphere to cause these sounds. So, the mystery still stands. Something similar happened back in 2003. Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei was on his first trip to space, alone, aboard a tiny spacecraft, when he started hearing something weird. It sounded like someone knocking on the spaceship's body, almost like knocking on an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. But what was even stranger was that the sound didn't seem to come from either outside or inside the spacecraft. Li Wei never figured out what it was, not even after returning to Earth. The situation was eerie enough to freak him out, probably just like what happened to Wilmore and Williams. But in the case of the NASA astronauts, it looks like they found an answer to the creepy sound. According to the team at Mission Control, the sound was probably just a technical issue. They think it's a speaker feedback loop between the space station and the Starliner. So, that sounds like great news, right? Well, not exactly. Their problems were far from over. The audio issue was definitely a concern for the team at the Johnson Space Center, but honestly, there were a lot of other technical issues going on with their spaceship. Even before the launch, experts noticed a small but persistent helium leak. This could be a big problem because this gas powers the thrusters, which control the spacecraft's orientation, speed, and trajectory. But in this case, the specialists thought, nah, it'll be fine. The leak was at an acceptable level and posed little risk to the mission's success, so they decided to go ahead with the launch. But then, things got worse. Once the astronauts were in space, specialists noticed another helium leak, then another, and another. In the end, they found 5 leaks, which had the mission managers pretty worried. So they urgently contacted Wilmore and Williams. The astronauts were about to go to sleep when they got the order to shut down 2 valves on the spacecraft. That way, it would be safe again and still have plenty of helium left to get them home. And when they thought it was all over, turns out it wasn't. The Starliner also had issues with the thruster control system. The capsule had 28 small thrusters, and 5 of them had technical problems at some point during their trip. 4 of the thrusters were fixed pretty quickly, but 1 of them never worked again. So first, there were the helium leaks. Then the thrusters weren't working properly. And now, there's this weird pulsing sound coming from inside the spacecraft.
It seems like the problems with the Starliner just kept piling up. Suddenly, it became way too risky to bring the astronauts home. That's why NASA decided to cancel their return trip. Actually, they delayed it, extending their 8-day stay on the space station to 9 months. So far, they're expected to come back to Earth in March 2025. But it's hard to say for sure, since this date has already been pushed back before. What we know for sure is that both astronauts are stuck in space right now, waiting for the NASA SpaceX Dragon spacecraft to bring them back to Earth. Until then, they're sharing their floating home, which is about the size of a 6-bedroom house with 7 other people. Being stuck in an orbiting laboratory and unable to get home is definitely a desperate and suffocating situation for most of us. But it looks like they're handling it pretty well. Both of them had already done 2 long-duration stays in orbit before, so despite their families, both astronauts are used to it. And they said they're grateful for the extra time in space. Before the mission began, NASA also made sure they understood all the risks of the flight, including the chance they might have to stay at the station longer than planned. That's why both Wilmore and Williams fully supported the new date for their return to Earth. And they've been keeping their minds pretty busy up there, doing a lot of scientific work. One thing they're really focused on is looking after the plant facility at the space station. Their team is testing different techniques to see how they could help crops grow outside Earth. Figuring out how plants grow in space and making sure they get the right amount of water and nutrients is really important, especially as space travels keep going farther and farther beyond the moon. A lot of people are concerned about their safety and health, but there's no need to worry. They're completely fine. Stays on the space station usually last about 6 months or more. Also, the place is well stocked with everything the crew needs, including food, water, clothes, and oxygen. NASA and its partners often send missions with extra supplies to make sure everyone feels safe and taken care of. If Wilmore and Williams feel homesick and have some free time, they can always email, call, or video chat with their family and friends. The Boeing Starliner spacecraft returned to Earth on September 2024, but it came back empty, without Wilmore and Williams on board. It traveled in autonomous mode after undocking from the space station. The Starliner re-entered Earth's atmosphere after 6 hours of travel, using parachutes to slow its descent before landing at the White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. The landing was a success, but NASA specialists wish it could have gone as originally planned. I mean, with Williams and Wilmore on board. Now, all we can do is hope they have a safe trip home.
Strange explosions in vibrant blue colors are popping up around the universe and keeping astronomers intrigued. This rare and incredibly powerful event has a fancy name: luminous fast blue optical transient. This phenomenon doesn't behave like anything else we know of, and things got even stranger when the most recent one happened in a spot it shouldn't have. To really understand what happened last year, we need to go back a bit. This type of strange explosion was spotted first in June 2018. The blue blast happened about 200 million light-years from Earth and got the nickname the Cow. No, this happening didn't resemble a cow at all, but it did have an unusual format. Back then, this blast was the most asymmetrical explosion ever seen by astronomers. It burst into space in a flattened pancake-like shape, not in a typical sphere as they would expect. This phenomenon was similar to a supernova, which is the most common type of cosmic explosion that happens when a star exhausts its nuclear fuel and collapses under its own gravity. However, scientists also noted 3 crucial differences. Number 1, this phenomenon is more powerful than a typical supernova. When it happens, the blue burst emits more energy than an entire galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars like the Sun. Number 2, it's much faster. The explosion reaches its peak brightness and fades away within a matter of days, while a supernova can take weeks or even months to completely dissipate. Then the last difference, these blue bursts can also be much brighter. These mysterious objects are considered the brightest known optical phenomenon in the universe. But unlike a regular supernova, it's believed that there are no radioactive elements to power this brightness. So that means the power must come from somewhere else. The question is, from where? This is just one of the mysteries that the scientists are trying to figure out. There have been some heavy investigations since the event was first observed, and 15 telescopes around the world are constantly looking for it. Since 2018, these extreme explosions have been spotted about once a year. So while they're rare, they're not incredibly uncommon. There are several possible explanations for the existence of these fast optical transients. Perhaps the most acceptable one is that it is a stellar corpse. I mean, what is left behind when a star calls it quits. So we're looking at two prime suspects here. They could be a neutron star or a black hole, producing emissions close to the speed of light. The theory goes like this. There is a massive star much larger than those that produce regular supernovas. Then it starts to collapse. Such an event would certainly be expected to leave a black hole behind. Let's say this massive star isn't ready to leave the universe in a quiet way. Instead, it creates a swirling disk around the black hole composed of gas, dust, and other matter, like it matters. This disk, called the accretion disk, can shoot out streams of material at incredibly high speeds, almost like powerful cosmic jets. And that could be exactly what we see as those sudden bursts of light. Again, it's just a theory. What exactly sets off these blasts remains a mystery, and much more observation and analysis are needed. Experts believe that explaining such an oddity is a scientific goldmine. After all, we're talking about a stellar corpse that isn't just sitting there, it's actually quite active. Now, since this event was first spotted, all similar occurrences that our telescopes have captured happened in the same place. I mean, the explosions always occurred in the spiral arms of different galaxies. But last year, things changed. The Hubble Space Telescope left scientists speechless in April 2023 when its images caught this same type of weird explosion happening for the first time in the middle of nowhere. Well, it didn't happen inside a galaxy as it was supposed to. It happened in the space between two of them. More precisely, about 50,000 light-years from a large spiral galaxy and about 15,000 light-years from a small one. This event is known today as the Finch. Oh great. So when we finally get closer to finding some answers, the unusual location of the Finch phenomenon came to mess it up again. So maybe there is another explanation for it. Speculation began soon after the discovery. One idea is that it could have been a collision between two neutron stars traveling far outside their host galaxies. These two could have been spiraling toward each other for billions of years, and when they collided, they produced a flare over 100 times brighter than a normal supernova. For this hypothesis to be correct, one of these neutron stars would have to be highly magnetized, amplifying the explosion. Another possibility is that the explosion was a star being torn apart by a black hole with a mass between 100 and 1,000 times that of the Sun. Although we still have lots of questions, one thing is for sure. The Finch is a luminous, fast black optical transient. Except for the weird location where it happened, it has all the other characteristics to be classified as one. It's super bright, like me, and super fast, and its origin is super hard to explain. Plus, the data from the Gemini South Telescope, the Chandra X-ray Telescope, and the Very Large Array Radio Telescope have confirmed it. Adding this latest information only makes it harder and harder for researchers to finally find some kind of pattern in this whole event. The Finch isn't the only peculiar event in this category. Let's head back to the year before, to 2022. A blue explosion was spotted in September, and it got the nickname of Tasmanian Devil. Just like the previous ones, this blue burst came up and disappeared very quickly. Then, something mysterious happened. Exactly 100 days later, observers who were still tracking the phenomenon got an early Christmas gift. They observed another flare-up, and it was as bright and fascinating as the original one. Wait, so we're talking about two similar and strange explosions that happen at the same spot and close in time? Well, this was a first. Quickly, 13 telescopes around the globe all had eyes turned toward the Tasmanian Devil event, including one equipped with a high-speed camera. Over the course of 120 days, they managed to capture another 14 irregular light pulses. This was certainly amazing because it proved that instead of showing up once and fading away as expected, the Tasmanian Devil continued to explode with supernova-like energies again and again and again. Can you imagine such power? This scenario still intrigues the scientific community because it pushes the limits of physics, not only because such extreme energy production, but also because of the short duration bursts. By the way, its flares last from 10 minutes to about 4 hours. Believe me, on the scale of the universe, that's considered super quick. This was the only time that an extended season of this event was observed. However, after some thought, the scientific community split their opinions about it. On one hand, the Tasmanian Devil could have been an utterly unique and one-of-a-kind event. On the other hand, maybe it was just the first time that our telescopes caught it from a more face-on angle. To further understand what's happening, scientists still need to observe larger samples of the phenomenon. All hopes are in the upcoming Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is currently being constructed in Chile. It will have a 27.5-foot-wide telescope, coupled with the world's largest digital camera ever fabricated for this purpose. According to NASA, this technology might finally give us some answers about these blue explosions. We can expect some exciting times ahead, as this could be the start of a new chapter in our understanding of stellar evolution.